talking once more on my topic for the month about animals and about nature. Started that because on the first of the month we had the pet blessing, and that was St. Francis of Assisi's feast day. So I just thought the whole month would be a good topic to talk about. So today I'm talking about amazing animal communications. And when I was in ministerial school, one of the classes that I took was psychic experiments or psychic research. And one of the things that I had to do was a project. And it also happened that one of the books that I had run across at that same time was Rupert Shadrach's book called Animals Who Know Their Masters Are Coming Home. And it was about dogs knowing when their master was coming home, but it was also about how pigeons find their way home and how nobody actually knows how homing pigeons do it. They thought that they had philosophies and the idea, and all of those things sort of fell apart. So still we don't know how pigeons manage to find their way home. And at that, just prior to that, my husband had often told me how Roxy, our dog, would come to the door and wait until I got home. And then he died, and Roxy and I moved into a townhouse apartment. And it occurred to me that Roxy was not meeting me at the door any longer. When I would come home, she would be at the top of the stairs looking at me, waiting for me to release her or call her down the stairs, at which point she would race down the stairs and be ever so glad to see me. Now that was a change of behavior for her. And it occurred to me that this would be an interesting experiment for my class. And so I did it this way. I decided that I would, before I got home, about 2 miles away from home, I would start speaking to Roxy and invite her to meet me at the door. That was my experiment. And just to qualify it, I would, when I got to the mailbox, which was like, maybe a half a mile, no, that's too far, a quarter of a mile away, when I got back in the car from getting the mail, I would once more speak aloud to her. Now here's a good thing, you can be talking these days, and people won't think you're so crazy. They think you're talking in your Bluetooth. So I would sort of like pretend that I was talking to my Bluetooth, when in fact I was actually talking to Roxy. And the apartment was arranged in such a way that she could not actually hear my car pull up, and she didn't start barking or reacting until people were actually knocking at the door, because there were double windows and the way the whole apartment was configured. So I knew that she wouldn't be able to hear me until I actually walked in the door. So that was my experiment, to talk to Roxy, to ask her to meet me at the door, to come down the stairs, meet me at the door. And this is what the experiment, it was just short, so I started on Tuesday, the 17th, and when I walked in, she was halfway down the stairs. Wednesday, she was at the top of the stairs, and there was no behavior change. Thursday, she was at the door, behavior change. Friday, she was at the door, behavior change. Saturday, I didn't go out. Sunday, I was in and out, and I didn't communicate with her. Monday, she was at the door, behavior change. Tuesday, at the door. Wednesday, halfway down the stairs. Thursday, at the door, behavior change. Friday, she was at the top of the stairs, cowed and looking really guilty. And the reason for that was there was a dead mouse on the floor, and she anticipated that I was going to have the reaction that I had. So we don't count that day either. Saturday I was home all day studying. Sunday she was at the door. Monday she was at the door. Tuesday she was at the top of the stairs and no behavior change. And the reason for that I finally calculated was that my mother had been unwell and I had not given her a clear message. So she didn't get the message. So Wednesday she was at the door. Thursday she was at the door. So when I did the calculations, I was surprised at how much she actually responded. Of the 14 days that I sent her a message, she responded positively 9 times, which was a 64% response. Now, Roxy was, she's not with me any longer, a smooth hair, blue merle collie. And collies responded rather poorly in this. They only responded like 62%. And so she actually responded better than most collie dogs would. And she scored above average for her breed. So I told you the extenuating circumstances about why she didn't, because first one time my message was poorly directed, and the second time was that she was anticipating that I was going to run into this mouse, and she was a little scared of me. So that was my experiment with Roxy and having communications with her. There's a book also called Beyond Words by a woman named Marta Williams. And she talks about how she's a dog communicator. She tells the story of how a dog found its way to her front door. Well, actually not her front door, but a student of hers' front door. And it had been hit. So her student, this woman who communicated with the dog, took the dog to the vet. And on the way, she had a conversation with this dog. And the dog told her that its name was Daisy. The dog in pictures described its owner and said that the reason that she was at the woman's door after having been hit is because she had been out hunting with her owner and got lost. So that was the reason. So she had a tag on, she had a chip. They contacted the owner who came. The owner met the description to a T of the way the dog had pictured it for this communicator. The dog's name was Daisy, and it had been out hunting with its master and had gotten lost. Pretty amazing stuff, eh? Then she tells another story about a shelter worker in Marin County who had been attending to a husky who had one clear blue eye. And that husky had been in the shelter for 6 months. And finally, the husky would, when anybody would come to see it, to think about adopting it, the dog would jump up on the screen and stare very intently at the people who were looking for adoption possibilities with his eye and scared folks off. So the woman at the shelter talked to the dog and said, you know, things are not working for you the way they are. Why don't you act like a joyful puppy? Why don't you wag your tail and act friendly? And the very next group of people that came through, the dog acted friendly, got the message. And that very same day, that dog was adopted after having been in the shelter for 6 months. So, what does that have to do with us? Besides, it's just really interesting to me. Shakespeare said that there is more in heaven and earth, Horatio, than ever dreamed in your philosophy. So there's a lot more going on here than just chit-chatting with animals. There is a communication possibility in that one essence that animals tend to be connected with more easily than we are. I had a conversation just a day or so ago with this woman who had those kinds of abilities to know and to see. And as a very young child, she was stifled. And I think that all of us, to a greater or lesser degree, have that ability to know and to communicate, not just with animals, but with each other. There is more than we are able to know or see in our current philosophy. Not our philosophy so much, but the way we live our lives and the way that we are trained. That kind of deep knowing is trained out of us. And we're told in ways, subtle ways and very clear ways, that what we see is not the truth. That we must be imagining it, we must be making it up. That happens to children, and it happens to, I believe, so many of us. So, Sheldrake talks about the morphic field of nature, meaning that nature is organized in a series of levels, in which there's the higher levels incorporate the lower levels. And so there's an organized field for everything we observe. There's a field for crystals, there's a field for tissue, a field for society, that are incorporating the lower, if you want to use that term, because it's not a matter of lower or higher, it is just what it is, that incorporates the wisdom and the knowing of all things. So we can use these kinds of communication concepts that people who communicate with animals use, and for animals that communicate with humans use, to allow us to have richer relationships, to allow us to be connected with each other in a deeper, richer, more loving way. So these are the steps that Martha Williams talks about to connect with animals, and that is just being aware of impressions or feelings. I know that for me, and I suspect for everyone here, the minute you walk into a room, you have an impression of what the atmosphere is like. Am I wrong? No, I don't think so. We all have that sort of pre-knowing of what's up in a room without necessarily visual cues without necessarily anyone speaking. There's just that impression that we have. And we can do that with other people also. We can have those kinds of impressions to get feelings without communicating and without having to have it spoken. Now, because so often we have been desocialized in that way, we can miss it. And we can miss it way far off. But if we allow ourselves to trust, we can have those kinds of early on understandings. The second thing she suggests that we do is notice the kind of word hit that you get. What word comes to your mind? So when we were talking about the dog that was hit by a car, and the word Daisy came to this woman. And if we trust those first impressions, then we can gain a lot of information about others and about each other, and that can facilitate our interaction. Because it is in this morphic field that connects us all on so many different levels. So also notice any pictures that may come to you, and when you get those pictures, allow yourself to trust them. Just, that's really the basics. Just learning how to trust your intuitive knowing and allow yourself to live more richly in your life and in your world. And finally, some people have smells or tastes. And for me, the smell of roses comes when I know that spirit is near. My awareness of spirit, because of course, spirit is always near, right here with me. But noticing smells and tastes also facilitates that kind of rich, loving interaction with all of us. So I've talked about dogs a lot, but there are cat issues. And cats are really wonderfully intuitive also and communicate. So I'm going to tell you the story of my cat, Lucky. And this, of course, is my signal to tell you that probably I will have a tear. Oop, can't get to my pocket. So Lucky was called Lucky because he was adopted into our family from deep East Texas, and my boys found him in a litter that had been abandoned in the dark piney woods of East Texas. And they brought Lucky home and said, Mom, can we keep him? Well, what am I going to say? No, you're taking him back to the forest. So we went to look for the rest of the litter, and they were all gone. So Lucky was named Lucky because he was the one that they brought home from the forest. And he was totally black and just quite the loving character. So he moved with us to Albuquerque, and he was an outdoor cat because that's what he was. He was feral when we found him. And he would not have it to be in the house at all. He was quite cunning about making his escape. So one day, I awakened with the feeling of Lucky heavy on my chest, sitting on my chest and purring. But when I became fully awake, I realized that he wasn't there. I had awakened to the feeling of lucky, heavy on my chest, purring. And when I came fully awake, that was not where he was. And he never came home. So he had come to say goodbye. I don't know what happened to him. There were reports of coyotes in the area. He could have found a different home, but I never saw him again. But he let me know. And we can have those kinds of communication with animals and with each other. There is more in heaven and earth than is in our philosophy. There's more. And more often, we're discovering that science and spirituality are actually the same. The more we learn from science, the more clearly we come to understand that spirit, the divine, the unifying force is all there is. There is only one. And when we can incorporate the wisdom of the communication that the animal world has, then we can enrich it and enliven our own spiritual lives, trusting that the visions that we have, the words that come to us, the pictures that we see are the truth. And the more that we allow ourselves to move into that realm, the richer our spiritual lives will become, the richer our personal relationships will become. And the more our world will be healed. So I love you all from this place of deep communication. Namaste.
Namaste.
So I'd invite the practitioners to join with me. As we just hold this congregation in love, knowing that the deepest truth is we are connected in ways that cannot be ever separate. On the deepest level, we are one with the one. And just like an organ of my body, Circle's Edge is an organ of that divine essence. It cannot be separate. And I absolutely know and acknowledge that once love has been expressed, it is in the cosmos forever and ever and ever. We cannot ever call love back and change it. I know that I am deeply connected to all that I identify as Circle's Edge. I'm deeply connected with all that I have ever loved. And just as I received the message of love from Lucky, I know that the message of love flourishes everywhere because it cannot be recalled. Just like the tone of the piano moves infinitely into the cosmos, the tone of love moves infinitely into the cosmos. Once the string of love is plucked, it is forever vibrating. It cannot be otherwise. So I hold in my heart, my thoughts, my words, my very spirit, my very soul, deep love for Nancy, for her family, for those that I consider part of this community. And I allow myself to rest in peace, to rest with ease, because it is all the one whole. Creative force, creative source, creative divine love. And I celebrate that. I know that love is generated from the outside, from the inside out rather. It doesn't come from the outside. It need not be reciprocal. It is only love. So I give thanks for all of that. I celebrate all of that. I declare it done. And I say, and so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you, practitioner. So, another congregational song.